I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this. For years, I believed I had a perfect life, a loving wife, a beautiful home, and a circle of close friends we could trust like family. I used to read stories about betrayal, shake my head, and think, that would never happen to me. But life has a cruel way of humbling you. This is the story of how I lost my wife, my best friend, and the trust I once had in people I thought were closest to me. Chapter 1. A Picture of Happiness. My wife Emma and I had been married for almost 10 years. We met in college, young and full of dreams, and built our lives side by side. I worked in finance, long hours at the office, while she built her career as a teacher. Together, we created a warm little home, the kind of place friends love to visit. And we had plenty of friends. Every weekend, our house was alive with laughter. Cookouts in the summer, game nights in the winter, birthdays, holidays. We had an open-door policy. People often said we were the glue of our friend group. Among our closest friends was a guy named Mark. He was married to Emma's best friend, Claire. The four of us spent countless evenings together, double dates, vacations, even babysitting each other's kids. Mark and I got along well. He was charming, funny, and easy to be around. Over time, I came to think of him as a brother. If you had told me back then that he would become the man who destroyed my marriage, I would have laughed in your face. Chapter 2. Subtle Changes. The first signs were so small I didn't notice them at first. Emma started spending more time with Claire, or at least that's what she told me. She'd say things like, "I'm going to Claire's to help her with something," or, "We're having a girls' night, don't wait up." At first I thought nothing of it. They were best friends. Why wouldn't they hang out? But gradually, little things didn't add up. One night I ran into Claire at the grocery store when Emma was supposedly with her. Claire looked surprised and said she hadn't seen Emma all week. I laughed it off, thinking maybe I misunderstood. When I asked Emma later, she gave me a quick excuse. She said plans had changed last minute and she forgot to tell me. I wanted to believe her. I did believe her, because the alternative, that she was lying, didn't make sense in my world. Chapter 3. The Growing Distance. Over the months, Emma grew more distant. She wasn't cruel or openly hostile, but she was distracted. She laughed less at my jokes, avoided eye contact at dinner, and spent hours scrolling on her phone. At night, she turned away from me in bed, claiming she was tired. When I tried to ask her about it, she'd brush me off. "You're imagining things." "I'm just stressed from work." "Don't be paranoid. Everything's fine." I started to feel like I was going crazy. I even began questioning myself. Was I neglecting her, working too much, not being attentive enough? The irony is, I was blaming myself while she was the one tearing us apart. Chapter 4. The Slip. The moment everything shifted came one ordinary Saturday. We had another group gathering at our place. Mark was there, as usual. I remember watching them from across the room. It was subtle, but once I noticed, I couldn't unsee it. The way she leaned in too close when he spoke, the way his hand lingered just a little too long when he passed her a drink, the way they avoided eye contact with me but couldn't stop glancing at each other. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was innocent, but a seed of doubt had been planted. That night, after everyone left, I asked Emma directly, "Are you and Mark? Is there something going on?" She laughed, then looked at me like I was insane. "Seriously? He's married to Claire. He's our friend." "God, you're paranoid." Her reaction embarrassed me. I felt guilty for even asking. I told myself to drop it, but in my gut, I knew. Chapter 5. The evidence. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who snoops through his wife's phone. But suspicion eats at you like acid. One night, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. She had changed her password. That was all the confirmation I needed. Emma had never hidden anything from me before. I didn't get into her phone that night, but from then on, I started watching more carefully. A week later, I came home early from work, unannounced. The house was empty. Her car was in the driveway, but she wasn't home. I called her. No answer. After 10 agonizing minutes, she texted, "At Claire's, helping with the kids." I drove to Claire's house. Her car wasn't there, but Mark's car was parked 2 blocks away from our house. That's when I knew. I parked a little down the street and sat in my car, engine ticking as it cooled, feeling stupid and exposed. My hands were sweating so badly, the steering wheel was slick. I wanted to crawl back into the office and tell the first colleague I saw to never mention my name again. Instead, I watched Mark's car through the windshield like a man watching a slow-moving train wreck. There's a peculiar, quiet terror that lives in the chest when your worst suspicion finds a concrete thing, a car, a receipt, a photograph. Before that, suspicion is just cold wind. Once you see something physical, it becomes a storm. I called Claire as casually as I could manage. I asked if Emma was home. She said no, she was at work. She sounded annoyed at my question, and that annoyed me further. I tried calling Emma again. Vibration, then silence. I texted. Nothing. My phone felt heavy, like a landline you could trip over. 2 blocks away, through a break in the hedge, I saw Emma and Mark walk out of a small bistro, laughing. He had an arm around her waist. They moved like people who were secretly rehearsing a life together. For a second, time slowed. Her hair in the streetlight, the angle of their shoulders, the way she rested her face near his chest. I wanted to flip a switch and return to a version of us where this had never happened. But life doesn't have that switch. I followed them, not bravely, not cinematographically, just the way somebody follows a thought into a bad decision. I saw them get into Mark's car. I watched them drive away. My mind did the cruel arithmetic. Dinners out, sudden double dates, the subtle flirtations. I had been invited to their birthday parties and stood 5 feet away while they exchanged smiles that were not for me. That night I didn't sleep. I drove back to the house and sat on the back steps until dawn. My neighborhood woke up like a washed painting dog, walkers, newspaper deliveries, someone jogging with headphones. To them, my life was ordinary. To me, it was as if the world had rerouted around a sinkhole and I foolishly stood on the edge. The next morning, I confronted Emma. I didn't plan my words. I rarely do. I don't think well when my heart is a hammer. I put the keys to Mark's car on the kitchen table like an accusation. She looked at them, then at me, then at the floor, then finally at me again. The silence between us grew thick and heavy, the kind of silence learned through all the small lies that precede a big one. "Who is he?" I said, because I needed it to be said. She swallowed, her eyes went glassy. "You already know. You were with him last night." "I was," she said, so small I would have missed it if I hadn't been hurt. We had dinner. That's it." "Dinner?" I said. "You don't go on late dinners with the man whose wife sits 2 houses down and then come home acting like you spent the evening folding laundry." She flinched. "You're making it worse," she whispered. "You've been making it worse for months," I said. "The hiding, the lies, the texts you leave face down, Mark's car on our street. Claire doesn't know where you were. I found receipts in the glove compartment. I saw you with him." She put her hands to her face and did something I'd done 100 times. She cried. Not the angry, theatrical tears, but the quiet, hollow ones of a person who has finally been seen. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I never meant for it to be like this." And then she said something that hurt more than the evidence. It started because I was lonely. That small phrase, lonely, was both confession and indictment. I had been away a lot with my job, but I'd always thought that absence could be remedied with phone calls, with weekend plans. I had not understood how slow, corrosive loneliness weaves into you until it had already done so. We tried to talk. We tried to sit like adults and name things and patterns. There was a bizarre detachment to those early conversations. When you're being told truths that undo the scaffolding of your life, the mind separates, catalogues, returns to you the facts like cold objects. She described dates that had started with shared laughter and ended in a proximity that felt new and therefore intoxicating. He had listened to small, neglected stories she had tried to tell me one too many times and would only half hear. He had said the right things. He had made small gestures, an unexpected coffee, a remembered joke that compounded into a sense of being wanted. "You made me feel young again," she told me once, and I felt both sickened and mercilessly sad, because I loved her more than I loved my selfish pride. I thought of the nights I'd pat the kids asleep and come downstairs exhausted and numb. I thought of the time I'd forgotten her birthday because of a board meeting and how she'd laughed it off. All these small omissions had been the mortar that, over years, loosened the bricks of our life. From the moment the truth came out, there was a strange, relentless choreography. Call lawyers, book the counselor, tell the family, tell the kids. Everyone believes the drama of a big reveal. No one tells you how mundane the aftermath is. It's spreadsheets and forms and calendar invites for custody and mediation. It's also people. People who show up and people who don't. Some friends were careful, like a limp handshake. Others picked sides as if choosing a football team. Mark didn't make it easy. When I finally texted him, bold in the way of men who feel wronged but not brave, he responded in that flat, composed voice I later realized was always his public tone. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. It just happened. That utterance has stuck with me, not because of its contrition, but because of its casualness. The man who volunteered at our kids' school and built pizzas on summer nights treated our collapse like a spilled drink. I wanted to shout, to break his windows, to pour salt on his sidewalk. I did none of those things. I called him once, and we had a conversation that felt like a low-budget courtroom. Only later did I realize civility can be a performance, and that performance was part of what had kept it hidden for so long. Claire was another story. She called me one night, shaking with quiet fury. Her tears were sharp and geometric. She wasn't the flailing friend of the betrayed type you see in bad movies. She asked for the truth and then refused it when I gave it. Eventually, she and Mark separated after some weeks of trying to keep up appearances. The town centre had gossip. Our social circle rearranged itself into new constellations. Family pressure came in waves. My sister told me, in a tone of betrayed protectiveness, to take the kids and get out. My father, who always had a way of simplifying things into checklists, said, "Get a lawyer, protect the assets." There is a cruelty in adults who instinctively administer practical medicine to wounds that are not purely physical. I called a lawyer because it felt responsible, because children are involved, and there's a legal world attached to those small people. We began counseling. Not the kind of therapy where you get soft and floaty. The first sessions were brute honesty and rules. No contact with Mark, full disclosure of messages, agreed boundaries. I demanded transparency, like a man who thinks a thorough inventory can prevent further theft. She complied. For a while. Then slowly, inevitably, the edges blurred again. People who have been hurt often find comfort in boundaries, but the world is porous and mistakes are made and human hearts are inconsistent. The kids were the hardest part. Milo, my 8-year-old, asked questions that were surgical in their simplicity. "Is Mum going to leave?" he asked one morning, his cereal untouched. June wanted to know if she'd still see her mother's face when she woke up. You say things to children to give them scaffolding and hope they will build with it. We told them we were having problems and that both parents loved them. That was the honest version and the safe version filtered. It was not enough, and it was more than nothing. A child's understanding of permanence is different from ours. They live in the moment and also in a lifetime. I tried to be stable for them, and often failed. One of the cruel ironies I found was that in the middle of the mess, there are ordinary moments that almost feel sacred for how mundane they are. Making sandwiches for school, taking Milo to soccer, reading June a bedtime story where the hero gets his toy back. These tiny acts felt like defiance against chaos. They were rituals that said the world was still capable of ordinary goodness. They were also, truthfully, therapeutic. The small kindnesses to my children anchored me when my own life was unmoored. As weeks became months, the affair's immediacy dulled into a dull ache. Part of that was time, and part of that was the mechanization of living appointments, work, school. Another part of it was the way Emma and I began to redefine our relationship. At first, everything felt possible: reconciliation, revenge, reinvention. Then we learned that the magnitude of repair required more than words or promises. Repair required consistent new habits and a humility neither of us had practiced in the necessary way. Emma tried. I could see it. She put down her phone in the evenings. She showed up for therapy. She apologized and did small things to show she was present. Breakfast made in the morning, a note left on the fridge, sitting through a kids' show without her phone. Slowly, like frost melting on a window, some warmth returned. But there was always the shadow. You can't unknow something once you know it. She wore her guilt like a coat that sometimes slipped off and sometimes became armor. There were moments when I forgave in a way that felt convenient. A quick forgiveness to make an airport run simpler, to stop the kids from having to shuffle houses mid-organizing. And there were moments of unforgiving clarity when I saw them at a community event and they held a conversation like two people with a private vocabulary. My stomach clenched, even if I pretended not to care. Forgiveness, I learned, is not binary. It is a series of small decisions practiced across a length of days. People online often ask, why not just leave? Why not make a clean break? The reality is never as tidy as the morality play you see in comments. We had 2 kids. We had a house that had meaning and memories, however tainted. I wanted to be the kind of man who could be decisive and dramatic. I also wanted to be the kind of man who did not break my children's world for my catharsis. There were logistics, and there was deep feeling. I wavered, I made mistakes, I cried in my car in parking lots. Eventually, the legal process creaked forward, not as drama, but as procedure. We separated for a while formally. We tested a living apart together arrangement where the children's life had stability, but our bedroom did not. That lasted a season. The law asked for documentation. It asked for simple definitions in long forms. We signed things. We fought over silly shit, whose name should remain on the family van, who would keep the espresso machine. The pettiness of such fights made me want to laugh and then made me furious. The small things of comfort become strangely symbolic. Keep the dishes, keep the mood. At some painful but inevitable moment, we made the choice to divorce. There was no gavel, only a series of documents and a quiet finality. I remember the morning we went to the courthouse together. Awkward in the way 2 people who used to be intimate can be awkward dropping our signatures like casualties. Afterwards we had coffee, and neither of us contained the silence that wanted to say more or less. We let the kids sense nothing more than the factual change. They noticed only that the bed had a different arrangement for the night. What followed was the slow work of rebuilding. People talk about the fireworks of newfound freedom after a separation like it's instantaneous. It's not. There were spurts of liberation. I slept in my bed again and felt the sheets own me for the first time in years. I ate food I wanted. I took a walk in the evening without the smell of someone else in my clothes. But there was also a deep, everyday loneliness, so thick it could be folded into shapes. A quiet eating alone, a series of Saturdays that stretched out like blank pages. I filled the gaps the way desperate men do. Therapy, friends, hobbies, stupid and helpful distractions. I volunteered at Milo's school on a Thursday, joined a weekend hiking group, found a therapist who didn't talk at me, but with me. It helped. I learned that grief has a geography. There are steep cliffs of memory and stretches of plateau where you can walk without falling. You map the terrain instead of collapsing. The town's gossip softened. Mark's presence faded like a watermark. He moved away months later, a relocation under the guise of a job. Some said he left because Claire pressed him. Some said his life of casual infidelity couldn't sustain itself in a small place where everyone knew too much. I didn't follow. Once his significance shrank, my anger did too. Retribution loses its heat when the narrative shifts. What remained was the quiet question. How do we make sense of the people we loved who became strangers? Claire and I had a complicated exchange of words once at a park bench. We both had children on the swings, and neither of us knew what to say. We offered each other the awkward courtesy of adult conversation and avoided the edges. I think in a different life, we might have found a way to be kind, but life gives us one map and we navigate it badly. Time, predictably, healed in the small ways. I started dating months later with the slow embarrassment of someone who had spent years in a marriage and forgot how to introduce himself. It was messy. It was not cinematic. There were awkward dinners and polite rejections. I learned things about myself I had never wanted to know, the kind of person I am at 2 a.m, how I hold affection tentatively. Dating made me both grateful for the old home and cautious of new ones. I did not pursue a revenge romance. There was nothing satisfying about mimicking the sins that had broken me. One of the clearest lessons, the one that follows you like a small companion, is this. Trust is built by small attentions. It's not a check you cash once and never revisit. It's the daily acts of listening and presence, the kind that look boring on Instagram but salvage marriages. I was absent in ways I only admitted later. I worked at what felt important: money, stability, while forgetting that the chemistry of a home is made from eye contact and remembering a weird story your partner told in 2013. Those little things are the compound interest of intimacy. Miss enough of them and interest compounds into distance. Do I regret? Yes. I regret not seeing the signs sooner. I regret my cowardice in confronting earlier. But I also regret the way resentment built up in ways I never tended. Regret is a complicated animal. It doesn't live alone inside you. It shares a room with learning, with responsibility, with the desire to be better. As for Emma, she lives a life that intersects with mine in the required ways. We are cordial at school pickups. We share a Google Calendar for the children's appointments. The raw, personal tenderness has transformed. There are times when I see her across the room at a recital and recall a laugh and feel nothing but a strange, soft nostalgia. There are also times I feel anger flicker and then cool. She dated someone briefly after the divorce. She did not make many enemies in the process, but she had lost the close circle we once shared. She reached out once with a hand and email asking about Milo's soccer schedule, and I replied promptly. There's a smallness and a kindness in that which I appreciate. If you are on the other side of this kind of story right now, reading this at 2 a.m. The house empty, heart hollow. Here are the things I wish someone had told me, in a direct and unromantic voice. Collect facts, but don't let them consume you. Proof is necessary when your life needs to be reorganized. Keep a record if you must, but don't let cataloging grief be your entire job. Protect the kids' routines. Stability for them matters more than your righteous catharsis. It doesn't mean lie to them. It means be deliberate with timing and language. Get legal advice early. Even if you hope to reconcile, understand your options and protect your rights. See a therapist. You need an honest place to undo the skeins of shame and anger. A therapist is not just a confidant, but a mapmaker through your chaos. Forgiveness is optional, quiet dignity is not. Don't rush to forgive because it's easier for others to watch. Decide for yourself whether you can rebuild. If you choose to leave, do so without making your kids collateral damage. Rebuild attention. Whether you stay or go, the skill you must learn is presence. Show up for small things. Practice noticing. It will save you from a future version of this story. The story doesn't have a Hollywood ending. Sometimes life leaves you with a season of manageable sadness and the slow, steady work of being a better parent and person. I'm still messy and imperfect. Sometimes I look at my kids and think of the life we had and the life we build now, and I feel both grief and fierce gratitude. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. It helps in a curious, human way to share the wreckage and learn that other people have walked similar paths and come out on the other side with the same imperfect wisdom. I don't have advice that will fix everything. I have the story of an ordinary man who lost the sense of home and then figured out how to build a new one out of the smaller bricks that were left.